All right, since AMD is capable of making both high-end CPUs and GPUs, why won't they make a gaming APU? Something with performance of PS5, but optimized for PC. The reason, well, there's probably a few different reasons.
Yeah.
One reason would be that it's just not cost-effective. I think what's beautiful about the whole PC platform is that you can select your motherboard individually. You can select your memory that goes on the motherboard and then the CPU that goes on it. Like, obviously there are like BGA systems where the CPU is soldered to the motherboard and maybe you can get memory fixed on it and all that sort of stuff as well, which is heading towards being a PS5. But we don't want that as PC owners. You want all your components individual if you can, unless you're making like a really niche, for some reason you need a really compact gaming PC, which I realize there are people that want that and there are solutions that cater to that market. But that's really what this would be for. Most of you don't really want integrated graphics unless there's some reason for why that's useful at a point in time. But most people who are buying like a 5600G or a 5700G will ultimately end up with a discrete graphics card. So the GPU within the CPU, the APU, is a make-do type solution. There will be some people that make like desk mini type PCs that put it at their TV or whatever and don't want a graphics card for whatever reason. I always find those systems to be fairly impractical myself, because you can make a mini ITX system that's not much bigger, significantly more flexible and more powerful. So
Yep.
yeah, but basically the reason why they don't make super powerful APUs is because it's a super niche market. They're really addressing a very niche market, and it's very expensive to make a fast APU because realistically you need like local memory. You need some sort of VRAM, so you don't have to go through the PCI Express bus.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it's heavily dependent on the system memory, and there's only so fast that can be, and it's certainly nothing like local memory.
Yeah, I mean, you see with the PS5 that there's no DDR4 in there. It's all GDDR memory. So, yeah, I think you make a really good point about how basically all the components on the motherboard would need to be soldered on there and not user changeable. So the GPU, the memory, the motherboard, the CPU all have to be sold as a package. And it's like, yeah, okay, you can maybe sell that for as much as like a PS5, whatever the materials cost is, which I'm sure is higher than the price of the console. Then you're saying, well, what's the value proposition of buying that versus buying individual components? We know a lot of people, for example, upgrade their GPU twice as often as their CPU. You buy a modern 8-core CPU, you would expect that to last for maybe 5 or 6 years, whereas if you buy a GPU, you might want to upgrade that after 2 years. If you buy an APU, well, you spend all this money to buy the GPU, but you can't then go and take it out and sell it. That's still in your system, and then you're buying like a secondary GPU. So how does that value proposition weigh up? It would really have to be for a system that you don't plan on upgrading at all, which, as you say, for a lot of people, that's not why you would want to build a PC. It's not.
Yeah, I don't know who wants a Windows console. And again, it's not cost effective because also we know the consoles aren't sold at a profit.
Yeah, that's
they make the profit through the game ecosystem. And so they're not going to be selling the PC hardware at a loss. So it ends up being more expensive again. It's like, who wants to pay that much money for a really slow APU when it's significantly cheaper to buy your CPU and graphics card separately and significantly more powerful, which is what we found with the 5700G. And that's a much, how much is this proposed much faster APU going to cost if we're looking at $360 US for the 5700G? Do you want to pay $500 for an APU?
Yeah, that's right. And there's all sorts of manufacturing implications as well. Like the fact that the CPU and GPU are separate means that they're separate dies. So it means that the dies themselves are smaller, which makes them less prone to manufacturing defects. There's going to be lower waste, which makes them cheaper. The more stuff you try and add into like a monolithic die, like the PS5 die, you start making it larger and larger and larger. You start getting these really big dies, which are not going to be as cost effective for you to buy, but instead of having them all separate, which is exactly why AMD's gone down the chiplet path with the CPUs. And we're seeing a lot of rumors about GPUs going down that path as well, is that you can't just keep making monolithic dies larger and larger. So we start getting mid to high end performance GPUs and a CPU in the same package. We're already at very large sizes for GPUs as is. it could even be more expensive. I mean, it's already going to be more expensive from a whole range of reasons that you've already listed, but even just from making the die, it's going to be more expensive than having the components separate. So
yeah, look, down in the future, we could get chiplet-based APUs, which would be faster than what we have today. But to get a chiplet-based APU that is delivering the level of performance you would get from a mid-range setup where the CPU and GPU are separate, it's going to end up costing pretty much the same amount of money whether you bought those components separately. So APUs are always going to be very much an entry-level solution, at least for a while. I can't see them really breaking into being mid-range gaming solutions anytime soon. I'm not really sure when that would make sense because it's at a disconnect with what the PC is all about, the PC platform.
Yeah, and we hear this a lot, don't we? With each APU, it's always like, oh, wouldn't it be great if they could make that GPU so much faster? Like, oh, it'd be so great if the GPU wasn't an entry-level product. And then you see the next generation comes out and they improve the GPU performance of the APU, but it's still, because all the other GPUs have improved in performance, it ends up in the exact same market position. And then the rumors come out and they're like, oh, the next GPU is going to offer like mid-range performance. Then it comes out and it turns out it's still entry-level because the GPU market's moved ahead again. So
yeah, look, it's no different to like if you didn't understand all of this and you're looking at it from a non-tech savvy perspective, you're like, oh, I can't wait for the next generation laptops because my laptop will then be faster than my desktop. So I'll get the laptop for gaming. But it's like, well, you could buy a desktop
that's right.
for the same generation and it will be faster again.